Director Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave tells the biographical story of Solomon Northup, who goes from being a free man to a plantation slave to regaining his freedom. This movie reveals the extent to which Solomon and the other slaves on the plantation have been dehumanized and deprived of their dignity. In this scene, Solomon reaches his breaking point and is stripped of his humanity. This is seen through McQueen's use of depth of field and long shots to accentuate the visceral violence and force the viewer to witness Solomon's suffering.
The scene opens with a long shot of Solomon in the location where he rebelled against his overseer. A close-up of his face reveals his emotions and shows Solomon reflecting and dreading what punishment he will face. It cuts to a shot utilizing depth of field where Solomon is in the foreground while three men on horse approach him in the background. This angle is foreboding as Solomon can only watch and do nothing as they approach him. There's an abrupt jump cut and the camera is level to the ground, showing the horrid nature of what is happening. The shot cuts back to a wide angle. With the audience being able to see the entirety of the situation, they can only watch in horror and disgust as Solomon is hanging. Another extreme close-up is used on Solomon's face, and it emphasizes the horrid nature of this act in history, because the audience can see it in broad daylight, making it a hard scene to forget.
This close-up utilizes a shallow depth of field to focus on Solomon's face, giving the audience an intimate and uncomfortable view of Solomon's despair. Similar close-ups are scattered throughout the ensuing conversation. The men speak of Solomon as if he's a piece of property. Solomon's gasps for air are nothing but background noise. In some shots of Tibbets, the background is blurred, but the rope supporting Solomon can be seen shaking, alluding to his struggle. The unsympathetic overseer leaves Solomon fighting to survive, only supported by the tips of his toes. Even if Solomon is barely alive, he can still be used to pay off Master Ford's debt.
I say, be gone!
The next part of this scene features a very wide, continuous shot of Solomon hanging. The contrasting lighting within the shot, which places Solomon in the dark, is symbolic of his struggle compared to his surroundings. Rather than containing many cuts like typical violent scenes, McQueen makes us watch Solomon struggle to survive for an uncomfortably long amount of time with very little else going on. This portrayal of violence through editing, or lack thereof, makes the audience uncomfortable and therefore more aware of the pain and brutalization he and other slaves endured. The same shot continues, but individuals enter in the light in the background. They pass by without paying any attention to Solomon's hanging, either immune or completely used to this sort of cruelty towards fellow slaves to the point of dehumanization. Eventually, a slave rushes in from the left, and the shot finally changes to a close-up, showing Solomon receiving a drink from this slave. As she exits, the master patrols the deck from the light background while Solomon hangs in the dark foreground. This juxtaposition of lighting and positioning is a nod to the master's superiority over Solomon and the lowly, less-than-human position he assumes.
The shot comes from a low angle and shows the master in his house looming over Solomon in the background. McQueen does this on purpose as to show the power the master has over Solomon. McQueen now cuts to the front side of Solomon close up in the foreground but out of focus. The camera focuses on children playing in the background. McQueen is using different depths of field here to contrast the two totally different events happening right next to each other. McQueen wants to highlight the inhumanity and normalcy of this event. Solomon continues to struggle, but no one offers to help. Now the master's wife is seen in the dominant position above Solomon, another use of depth of field. McQueen contrasts what we usually see with such violence in film. Instead of fast-paced, gory action, McQueen wants us to see the stark reality of what is happening by using long shots that make the audience want to look away. Finally, the scene ends and the audience can breathe again as Solomon is temporarily safe.